sharpen your teeth. The blame ghosts in the cold while you rot underneath.
On today's episode of Stop Blaming the Leads, we have the one and only Jesse Rack joining us. He is the CEO of Rack Electric and a very good friend of mine, longtime TSSG client, multi-time Generac award winner, prestige dealer, and this guy is a killer. We've had him on the show before. You guys know him. You love him. He's going to help you start building your business and stop blaming the leads.
Stop blaming the leads! You're scared of the mirror! You're scared of the mirror! Stop blaming the leads! There's blood on your hands!
Leads. Welcome back to another episode of Stop Blaming the Leads. If you don't know me, I am Chris Stillwell, the founder and CEO of TSSG. A little bit about myself, I did start in sales. I've worked in sales my whole life since 15 years old at Kirby Vacuum Cleaners. And I worked my way through the generator industry as a salesperson, as eventually a top salesperson, a top sales manager. And I was ultimately recognized by Generac with the Compass Award. And after years of building processes, selling generators in people's homes, leading sales teams, helping other people make a bunch of money, I decided to quit my job and start TSSG. And I started TSSG specifically for one reason. It was to help dealers across the country sell more generators. And our mission is really simple at TSSG. We help generator dealers stop guessing and start building real systems, real sales processes, service systems, digital tools, leadership structure, customer communication, and mostly accountability and repeatable systems that are scalable inside your business. The thing that I want you guys to understand is that dealers who win aren't the dealers who get the most leads. They're the ones with the best process. So if you want to learn more about TSSG and work with us more, please check us out at tssgcoaching.com, and you can follow us on social media at We Are TSSG. Now, today on Stop Blaming the Leads, we have a friend of the show, one of my good friends, Jesse Rack, is here, and I'm really excited to have Jesse in for a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is Jesse is going to be the featured speaker at our TSSG Field Tested event in Chicago in August. So I want to bring him on so everybody can hear a little bit more from the guy who's got all the answers down there in Florida, who's doing his thing. And the cool part that we're going to talk about today is how Jesse's business is not one lane. He's never been a one lane guy. He's been building a brand, generators, air conditioning, propane, customer relationships, industrial, whatever he can get his hands on. With no further ado, my good friend and the CEO of Rack Electric, Jesse Rack.
How's everybody doing?
Good, buddy. Good. Welcome to the show. I appreciate to have you here. Now, for people who are listening, who are under a rock, who don't know who you are, could you just give them a quick version of who you are, what you do, and why you're so successful in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jesse Rack. I'm the CEO of Rack Industries. We're a family-owned and operated business for over 30 years. I was involved with the business starting about 13 years ago. We started as traditional electrical contractors and kind of morphed into different verticals in the trades, generators being our largest bread and butter. And we've really just evolved the brand into this energy provider. I really feel that we're going through an energy revolution, both not only with automatic standby generators, but whether it's propane, gas, electric vehicles, solar. What I really tried to do was build a brand that could operate across all of those landscapes, and we could offer services to the customers that already trust us. And as we built that brand, we would just bring in more opportunities with neighbors, communities, and we've had a lot of success.
Yeah, well, I mean, you say more opportunities, and I think it's an interesting topic that we've been talking about a lot. And at what point did you look at the business and say, I'm not just building a generator business, I'm gonna build something bigger. I'm gonna build a home services brand?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, look, the goal was always to build a brand.
Okay.
In the beginning, I thought it was just going to be commercial. I thought it was going to be residential. But then as I started to mature and look at everything, I started to look at those big shiny trucks that I saw these different logos on, and there was a lot of them. And I started to envision myself saying, okay, well, we're really good at new construction. How do we get more service work? How do we get more diversification here at the organization? Because to me, my father had been through two recessions, 2001 and 2008, and it was tough. They went from 40, 50 guys down to three both times. By the second time, he really didn't want to get involved with service anymore. So his goal was to just keep his overhead low, keep his profit consistent. And, being an owner operator, there's a lot, you wear a lot of different hats. It was a small team when I got involved, 6, 7 guys. Oh, okay. And, here we are today with over 150 employees. And it was the diversification, and it wasn't about chasing shiny objects. It was about creating a plan for the future. How do we grow 10%? How do we grow 15% each year? And then obviously, just from our relationships, getting involved with mergers and acquisitions, that was just a pipe dream. Never really knew what that was. But today I look at our diversification through a lens, and I can tell you that our customers trust us in their home. We're known as the generator guy. Took a long time to become that guy. Okay. And now we're becoming known as that one call, one team for your home,
Well, I think that was a really good point you just made. You were known, though, cemented, niched as the generator guy. Everybody knew you as the generator guy. I know you have great electrical relationships and you do a lot of big electrical work and electrical jobs. But, I mean, Rack Electric is really known as a generator company, right?
Now it is, yes.
Yes.
So in the beginning, we were known as an electrician. My dad had ran a really great shop. Everybody knew that there was quality work, fair prices, really great customer service. And then I kind of stumbled onto generators as I saw these other companies have these nice big box trucks, and started to ask questions to people in the industry. Hey, what's that? And then I started to learn about reoccurring revenues, and that was a real learning curve because, in my philosophy, very similar to some of the OGs in our industry, it's about selling a box and it's about building a customer for 10 years.
Yes, sir.
And then we decided to really focus on the cross-selling opportunities, the air condition, the residential electric service, the gas, the propane, the appliances, so it really kind of helped us sustain whatever we're going through right now.
So was that the big switch for you to say, hey, I'm gonna, stop just being the electrician and move into generators? Was it the recurring revenue that was so interesting to you?
I would be lying to you to say that. Honestly, I fell in love with the gross sales.
Okay.
When you start
on sales. Okay. Yeah.
Bigger numbers on paper. I honestly was not very focused on the reoccurring revenue until about 3 years in, when I realized, man, we've sold almost 2,000 people, but we only have about 800 under contract. Oh. So then I started to say, okay, well, how do we build a complementary team to make sure that their responsibility is to maintain these contracts, maintain the customer service. We have a different team for different parts of the organization. And that's how the diversification kind of took place. Okay. I can't do all this without my team. My team has really, been the engineer to my architecture. And, but we do a great job. I mean, we're not perfect. We're human. We try to always focus on two big things, which is communication and people. And they're tough, so, but the maintenance plans have become a real growth opportunity for us.
Yeah, I get it. And I think that you've figured out how to continue to make consistent revenue even in the downturn times, right? And I think that's from, like you said, your dad running the business well through the recessions and having to grow and shrink. What is when someone asked you today, what is your main focus that Rack has as a business? What is that today?
I want them to think of us as an energy provider, and I think energy is becoming something that people are talking about, right? You've got the AI data centers. People are scared. People are worried about rolling blackouts, whether it's legitimate or it's media driven. Okay. But for me, Chris, I mean, you know me long enough now. For me, status quo is not okay. I like to try new things. When things feel like everything's okay, I like to shake it up. I like to push the people around me. My job as the CEO is to coach everybody. We run this organization with a very aggressive playbook on offense, but we also do a great job defensively, making sure that we don't lose our customers, and as I talked to you earlier, right, cross-selling to people who already trust us. I think that's the biggest missed opportunity in this entire industry. Most contractors spend all their time, all their money marketing to chase the next lead. Meanwhile, it's sitting there right there in your thousands of existing customers.
Absolutely. So when did you make this shift? Like what was the thing that went off in your brain that said, I have to start adding and growing these services like air conditioning, like propane? When was that?
Great question. In 2016, we really got involved with generators. 2017, Hurricane Irma hit, sold over 100 generators, and realized really, really quick within 2 years that we needed to start our own gas company. Obviously, gas has really grown. One of my greatest strengths is identifying really strong players. I want playmakers. And so I went and identified who my current general manager is, who you met, and we launched Rack Energy. That was 2019.
Okay.
We invested in ourselves. I said, I'd rather invest in myself than invest in a subcontractor who's not going to really care as much about the experience for my customer. Because at the end of the day, I was fielding all the customer complaints. I was getting the positive or negative reviews. Where it really started to grow was obviously around the pandemic. You're aware of the merger and acquisition we did in the Port St. Lucie area. I had been reached out to an owner/qualifier who, if he didn't fix these problems, they were going to go to jail. And we did everything right by the customer. We did everything we could to make sure everything was done 100% right. And we solved the problems. The team really rose to the occasion. And what I like to say is, because we're fiercely independent as a family-owned and operated business, I empower my people to do things that most organizations might not. And we're willing to try different things, hence the reason why you and I became great friends. We're willing to say, okay, our sales process is good, but it's not great. How do we make it better? That's why you hire a coach. You invest in yourself. And that's what I think is the hardest thing to get across to people within this industry, is understanding you get what you pay for.
Stop blaming the lane. You're scared of the mirror. You're scared of the mirror.
Stop Blaming the Leads is brought to you by TSSG Field Tested Live. If you guys are listening to this podcast and you're serious about getting real results, then join us in Chicago on August 5th for Field Tested Live. I'm going to be joined by my buddy Steve Schreiber from Generac, Kevin Larison from Oklahoma Generators, and Jesse Rack from Rack Electric. It's going to be a huge lineup. Throughout the day, I'm going to take a deep dive into the TSSG Field Tested system. I'm going to teach you guys how to schedule appointments, how to contact your customers, how to do the best in-home consultations. We'll talk about payment options. We'll talk about getting more referrals. And I'm going to show you guys the exact process that I've helped implement in more than 150 dealers all across the country. Get your tickets today. Go to tssgcoaching.com, and I'll see you guys in Chicago. Now back to Stop Blaming the Leads.
Stop blaming the lane. You're scared of the mirror. You're scared of the mirror.
So how did you then decide which services to add first? I know you had said that the experience for the customer was extremely important for you. Did you feel like using all these, because I know how we used to do it the same way that, a lot of people do it. You get a couple of propane guys. This guy does this area. This guy does that area. This company does that area. They give you some pricing, maybe per foot, per set, for tanks, and you got to go kind of third party the job. When did you decide to make that financial and personnel development? Like, how did that thought process cross to you and say, this is worth the investment for us at this point? The juice will be worth the squeeze.
Yeah, look, I think many contractors become way overly dependent on a single revenue stream. And then
Okay.
they become overly dependent on someone who doesn't care about your customer as much as you do.
Okay.
And that was kind of the deciding factor. When we had a lot of negative reviews, phone calls, never in my father's life. He's running this business over 32 years. So we looked at it holistically and said, okay, well, we're the problem. We're allowing these people on our projects.
Okay.
I also looked at other organizations around me. I always say this, I'm not into copying anybody, but there are some blueprints out there that have had a lot of success. And, you know, for instance, now we sell propane. We've got 3 bobtails on the road. That was not an easy process. That was a year waiting to be improved by the licensing, a year waiting to be improved by the insurance. Lost a lot of money just waiting, but you got to pay to play, and you got to do a great job running your organization. So I looked at the diversification through myself as a customer, and even
Okay.
for yourself. You trust me to take care of your generator. Well, then you're also going to trust me to take care of your gas and propane.
Yes.
And then HVAC was kind of like a fart in the wind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of looked at HVAC and I said, private equity's really gotten deep into my generator world.
Yes.
Maybe I should go mess with their air conditioning world a little bit. And that's been a humbling experience for me, learning a lot about HVAC. We're now in year 2.
Okay.
We bought a small organization out of the Orlando area. And, we've developed different marketing models. We give everything a 3-year roadmap. Right now, we're on that trajectory, even though things have been a little weird.
Yeah.
But the goal is to just continually build these complementary services that just help strengthen the business and reduce the risk of rack.
So can you explain then to maybe a dealer who's I don't know, somebody who's doing a couple million, 3 million, 7 to 7 million a year, maybe up to 10 million a year. They've got 4,000, 5,000 service plans already. Maybe somebody who's about half as big as you, right? Why would it make sense to them to make the investment into diversification? I know that the first thing that you're going to say is they already have the customer list, right? And we've already talked about that. But can you kind of talk about how your resources, how your business plan, how the people that you have in place have been able to port over into that other industry and kind of smooth it out, maybe bring some new ideas?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, it starts with people. It
Okay.
starts with a vision and alignment. As I continually tweak the formula that I've built here, that's called Rack. It really starts with the right vision from leadership, and then the right individuals. I was fortunate enough to find the right guy for propane and gas, somebody who was passionate enough to put a lot of sweat equity, somebody who believed what I said because I did what I said. I made a promise that within 2 weeks he'd have a license because he had worked at an organization 6-7 years and they never even offered that opportunity.
Oh,
And
wow.
within 2 weeks we were in the middle of nowhere, sharing a room, studying to become propane qualifiers, and that really built a bond. And then just kind of believing in your vision, having the ability to take risk. So if I was a smaller guy, I would be looking for that guy. I'd be looking for
Yes.
the Chris Stillwell that says, hey, look, my team is capable of doing the finances, the licensing, the permitting, but I need your ability that the codes and you know how to put these tanks in. Because when we started with gas, we had 2 people, and the gentleman
Yeah.
that I'm referring to was in the field. He would work in the field and then he would come in the office and do his paperwork. But all of a sudden, the customer satisfaction went through the roof, and
Okay.
it just kept growing. And as all of a sudden, we're looking at the bank account going, we need a bigger dump truck. We need more guys. We need an
Yeah.
air compressor to shoot our own missile bores. And that vision just continually growed. We didn't do it with any money. We did it with our own money. But it also worked because the organization having such diversification, like generators is not my only source of revenue. I also do commercial service work. I do residential service work. I do HVAC, 90% residential, small commercial. But then I also have this extremely dynamic EPC department that works for very large organizations building EV charging locations, and that's just relationships, continually just not being, again, happy with being comfortable. I don't like status quo. I like challenges.
But Jesse, that's all in the same Venn diagram, right? And that's the whole thing. And I know it's all under one roof for you now. And that's what you mean when you say energy company, right? Is that you're in all
Yes.
these different spots inside of energy. So I think when people hear you talk about it, you make it sound really easy. I just did this, I just did that. It's interesting that you say it like that because we just had an FTL event in Charlotte, and my buddy Michael Murphy, who's a premier dealer for Generac as well down in Premier Generators of Texas in Dallas, and he was speaking, and that's exactly what he told the crowd when people said, "How did you grow? How did you become this big business?" And he said, I found that right guy. I found that one person. How do you find that person? How do you incentivize that person? Because you can't put an ad out for it, right? How would
Well,
you suggest that someone goes and does that?
it goes back to coaching. One of my
Okay.
major investments in myself that I was referred to is I hired a wealth manager. And I said to this wealth manager, I'm really good at making money, but I'm not good at all the other things. I'm not good at tax mitigation. I don't know all my numbers through and through. Most of these organizations are running their businesses based on their bank account. They don't know their numbers. They don't know their margins. They don't know their overhead. They don't know their break even. So
Oh,
for me, it started with hiring a wealth manager who became very close friends of mine, is still my wealth manager. And then it started with putting together the team, looking at the organizational chart and saying, we need an operations manager, we need
mm-hmm.
HR. Some of it's luck of the draw. I've opened businesses and I've closed businesses.
Mm.
When you now with AI, there's so many different resources. So I would say as a smaller dealer, utilize ChatGPT or Claude or Grok and, look up something that's called a strategic alliance agreement, where you can essentially give somebody phantom stock so that
Yes.
they're a little bit more invested in the organization. Their sweat equity is going to be their buy-in because most
Yes.
people don't have the capital available. And that's what you kind of do. And so essentially, you're paying them a great salary. Maybe they have a company vehicle, maybe they have great benefits, but now they're looking towards net profits. Now they're really dialed in on buying the cheapest and the best material,
Yeah.
right? And they're trying to finish projects with the correct net profit so that then at the end of the day, they have the ability to get X percentage of that net profit.
Okay.
So now you start breaking it down. So, look, this, and I've said this before. One of the most important things is stop trying to do everything yourself. Okay.
Exactly.
The owner cannot be the salesperson, the dispatcher, the project manager, the accountant forever. In the beginning, yes, you can, right? We're all bootstrapping and we're ready to go. But the next phase of that is start operating your organization with systems.
Yes.
Stop blaming the lane. You're scared of the mirror. You're scared of the mirror. Stop blaming the lane.
Stop Blaming the Leads is brought to you by the TSSG 10 Steps to Selling Generators booklet series. Now, if you guys are enjoying the podcast today and you're looking for tools that you can actually use to put into your business, then you've got to check out our website, tssgcoaching.com, and get yourself our 10 Step to Selling Generator series. These are not generic sales booklets filled with a bunch of theory. These are field-tested playbooks built specifically for you as a dealer. So if you're looking to improve appointment setting, have better in-home consultations, have better job descriptions, know the exact process for reaching out to your customers, contacting them, if you want email templates, texting templates, if you want follow-up templates, if you're looking for scripts for phone calls, scripts for in-home consultation, this is the blueprint to change your business. And the best part is, we have great deals going online right now. Get to our website, tssgcoaching.com, browse our full library of books, but check out our TSSG 10-Step to Selling Generator booklet. It's out now on tssgcoaching.com. Now we'll get you guys back to Stop Blaming the Leads.
Stop blaming the lane. You're scared of the mirror. You're scared of the mirror.
The great Steve Roderick says you should have processes that run your business and you should run your processes, right?
Yes.
And I think like that layer of and that's what I think like, and I'm gonna say this here, you know, we know a lot of owners who think they take 2 vacations a year, but really they're on 3 cruises and they're away every weekend, and it's a week here and a week there, and then they come in and they say, hey, we don't have the money for marketing. I can't believe the generators aren't where they are. You know, we know those people, right? I think the difference, what you're saying, is be willing to make that sacrifice as far as part of the business is concerned, as far as maybe those extra bonuses or those extra salaries are concerned, to get that right player in, right? And I think the way that you and I could kind of relate it back to is sports. That's what we always go to, right? Which is if you want to get Otani, you got to pay for Otani. And maybe you're paying for the next 28 years, but if you want to win a World Series, it's kind of what you have to do, right?
Yeah, but he can't do it himself, and you know that, right?
Yes,
So it
you got to
starts
build
with
a team around it, for sure.
you've got to build the team, and I agree. If you want Otani, this is why they've won multiple World Series over the last few years. But like I said to you, got to stop doing everything yourself.
Yes.
Just like you're working with the smaller dealers, inputting operating systems. Nobody has operating systems. Nobody knows what they're doing. They're living off paper. Growth does not break businesses. Lack of processes break businesses.
Absolutely.
And I've been there before. I've been there, you know.
Well, I've seen you go through it too. You know, I've seen you have to make large changes in the business by shifting personnel around and having, you know, maybe even sometimes too many people in a department gumming works up, right? And that's come up. You know, I remember you and I had a discussion about the Toyota model, and I don't know if everyone knows the Toyota model, but I'll just tell you guys. And I told this to Jesse a couple of years ago. And you know what Toyota used to do, and the way that Toyota became the #1 car company in the world, which they are. You know, go anywhere other than America, everything's a Toyota. And the way they became this was they had a factory, and they said, how long does it take to build a car? Oh, it takes 5 hours. How many guys does it take? It takes 100. Great, build us a car. They build a car, and a week later they came in and they said, great, we're going to take 10 guys. Now you got 90 guys. How long does it take to build a car? And they said, it's going to take us an extra hour. Well, they'd come back a week later, and all of a sudden the time was back down to 5 hours. They'd say, okay, great. Now give us 9 guys. And eventually they would continue to take 10% of those resources until the team could finally was stretched too thin and couldn't hit the goal. But, you know, you find, and what I find is that you have to have the right people, not just more people. And I think that that's like what's important, is to kind of learn how to coach and learn how to work with those people and learn how to provide the environment they want to stay in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you got to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes the industry is changing. You know, you've got to have the ability to try different things. You know, we always say this, change is inevitable. Growth is optional. You know, and as we're going through what we're dealing with now in the generator industry, you know, not having a hurricane last year, you know, it definitely hurts. But as an organization, we have to make tough business decisions. None of them are personal. And the guys that are mature enough to understand, or maybe move to a different position or move to a different department, are thankful. Guys that don't, they just don't stick around, and it just is what it is. You know, I think at the end, it's part of life. You know, we're always, as much as I say this, you know, we have long-term goals, not short-term goals like most of the people in this industry. You know, my goal is to continually build a brand that sticks around here in the state of Florida and continually services the people that live in my community. So.
Yeah, I get it. And, you know, I'm used to being in sales, man. It's like being the coach of the New England Patriots. You don't have a winning season, you're looking for a new job, you know? So it's not easy. But I'll tell you, what I know you rely on, and I think a lot of our other dealers are starting to really rely on, I know the bigger ones do, is really the service work. You and I talk a lot about this. Now, I know that Rack Electric has over 10,000 annual service contracts and residential service customers, not to mention all of the commercial business and that stuff that you guys do. And I just want people to kind of get a little idea of what Jesse does in Florida. When we say 10,000 contracts, and you talk about that, I want you guys to grasp that these aren't just residential 14, 18 kilowatt units. In Florida, a lot of these units are liquid cooled units, bigger units. There's a much larger percentage in their area of those units. Now, we've talked a lot about how to create revenue, Jesse. Out of your 10,000 service contracts, I know it sounds easier to people. How do you consistently create new opportunities with those customers?
That's a great question. Number one, it starts with retention, right?
Okay.
Because the goal is, we don't want to lose that customer. We've invested a lot of time and energy into it. I think the biggest mistake contractors make is treating a maintenance agreement as a retention tool only. We view it as a platform, right? Every time we touch a customer, we ask ourselves, what problem can we solve next? Okay.
Okay.
Generator customer might need propane. They've been using another provider. A propane customer might need HVAC. HVAC customers may need surge protection or a panel upgrade. So what we really do a good job of is coaching our techs to identify things that rack can service within that home and then presenting that opportunity to the customer. We don't try to oversell. And I know there's some organizations out there that everybody's commission based and they're just push, push, push. We don't. For us, the key is creating a system. We train the technicians to identify the problems and the needs, not sell products, And a good technician should leave every home knowing the age of that generator, the age of the equipment of the HVAC, what kind of fuel source, are there any electrical safety hazards? Do they have any future plans for that home? And we continually train this and go over this nonstop with our technicians. At the end of the day, not every one of those customers, not all 10,000 are the same, but we try to focus on the life cycles of the units. We try to stay ahead. We try to explain to the customer to be proactive versus reactive. And we have some really great marketing programs that we use because the data is the revenue that's hiding within your organization. So it goes back to those systems, right?
Amen. That's what I'm saying is like you. What I love about you is that you're focused on the data, and when whoever's listening out there right now is, I want you guys to understand this is that you only have two ways to function inside a business. You either are functioning off of data or you're functioning off of emotion. There is no in between there. When you make decisions, it's either data based or it's emotional based, okay? So what we're talking about here is having that data, knowing about these people. Now, why do you find it so important to have your staff retrieving this data for you and getting this information?
It all starts with our CRM, okay? It all starts with what our organization believes in, which is one company, one CRM. It starts with operations and dispatch enforcing these habits, forcing the fact that we want these photos because we want this data. And then our goal realistically is, if it's already a active oil well, why would we want to abandon it when we know this customer trusts us? Again, we're not looking to sell them products they don't need. We're trying to give them solutions that they may want. We have our technicians talk and we follow up and say, hey, is there any new projects coming on? We have different nurturing softwares that constantly are keeping in touch with them, because the thing is this, right? If I had to choose between spending $100,000 on new leads or investing in an outbound campaign to my existing customers, I'd start with the existing customers every single time.
It's not even a question, bro. It's not even a question.
I've already paid to acquire them. They already trust me. They're going to answer the call, So the team, starting in operations, starting in service management, starting in membership management, they do a great job with our customers. And for us, a customer with one relationship is good. Okay. A customer with 3 relationships rarely leaves. And when I say that, I'm talking one relationship is a generator maintenance. 3 relationships is a generator, propane, and HVAC maintenance.
Okay.
That's where the customer lifetime value just explodes.
And that's where it becomes sticky, right? And that's what I always like to use that word sticky is that rack electric's a part of our life. They're sticky. We can't really go anywhere with get them off us, you know?
Yeah, and everybody, you got to remember, Chris, everybody always wants a guy, right? So, then
Yes.
somebody new, obviously, Florida's had so many new people move here,
Oh
and the new
gosh.
neighbor comes in, and here I come over with, hi, Chris, I'm Jesse, and do you have an air conditioned guy? And I got a guy,
No,
I
absolutely.
mean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'll tell you one funny thing is funny. People still don't remember we do AC, and I'm like, hey, it's in our middle name, AC, right?
That's
So
good. That's
I'm
good.
constantly trying to remind people, yes, we also do AC. Well, we know you're the generator guy. Yeah, but you know what I always get tired of? The AC guy always blames the generator guy. Well, guess
Yes.
what? Now there's no more blaming. We take care of the whole home. It's very simple. You get a complete analysis video of everything that we've done. You're up to date on your entire home, and you trust the technicians that are coming because they're background checked. They're overly trained to be the best version of them who they can be. They're trained on all the technologies, and you start to build a rapport with these guys.
No, I think that when you describe this stuff, it's so funny because like to us it's so easy because we do it, right? But I think when a lot of people listen to this, they hear that and they say, "Wow, that's light years away from where they are." And honestly, Jesse, the biggest difference is that you are willing to invest in technology. I know that you, John, Eric, the rest of your crew have been using Service Titan for years, and you guys are super invested in the various courses that they have, the different stuff that you do with the employees. Everybody's got it on a tablet or on their phone or on their screen.
Yep.
And like you said, it's
Every
one
tablet.
system for one business. It's one source of truth for you. And so do you believe that because you've invested more in technology that it's helped exponentially increase that customer lifetime value?
Absolutely. I mean, you got to remember there's a bridge right now, right? You've got the small dealers, the
Hmm.
medium to large size dealers, and then you have private equity.
So you're one to
And for
three, you're 3 to 10, and then the big
and then
guys.
it just goes into another dimension. And this is just a whole new world for me learning, right? So
Yeah.
so as we communicate with Titan and as I have built relationships with other dealerships, I find that people don't use Titan the way we do. We
Yeah.
use Titan for inventory. We use Titan for work in progress. We
Hmm.
use Titan for dispatching and time schedules, where
Yeah.
other people are just using it as a maintenance tool. And I'm
Hmm.
saying to myself, wow, how many different softwares do you have your team operating out of? How unorganized is everything over there? So for us, like you said, building that stickiness, creating that ecosystem of the home,
Hmm.
creating that ecosystem of Titan, maximizing the potential of it, which is why we've just gone from 0 to 100 real quick with just growing the organization. And a lot of people call me all the time and they go, hey, what do you think of Service Titan? I said, man, you better hold on because,
Yeah.
we took a year and a half to develop it. We've developed it. We launched it. We broke it down. We fixed it. We broke it again. We
Yes,
fixed
sir.
it. We just had a meeting yesterday. We're fixing it again. And,
Yeah.
so it's just one of those things that you just kind of have to constantly reevaluate and make sure it's the best software. And then, people are people, you got to have
Of course.
stopgaps.
Well, it's also like any tool, right? We sell software. We work with Zuper, and we're definitely not working with organizations with 150 people. I'll tell you that much, right? We try to keep it smaller, and one of the things that we find is that people expect like a seamless, perfect software experience, and I'm
No,
like,
that's not
what
software.
else in your business is seamless and perfect? Why are you putting this on the software company? When has anyone ever used software that's ever been seamless or perfect? So you're right.
Well,
You have to be willing to invest. And the cool thing that you said there was you spent a year and a half in it. It wasn't what you wanted, so you broke it down and you restarted and you rebuilt it. What I hear people do all the time is say, we got 6 months into our software and it didn't do
and they
exactly
abandon it.
what we wanted all the time, so we abandoned it. And it's like that Monty
Oh,
Python, that where they go like, I built it on the swamp and it fell into the swamp, so I built another one on
no.
the swamp. So they just go get a new one. So I think what's there is your resilience is what's important, right? But talk about your investment into the staff with the technology as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have a really great operations manager. He's always constantly having one-on-one meetings. We're always fine tuning it, and Obviously, we have SOPs. These are things that smaller organizations, these are things that we didn't have 2020, but by
Yeah,
2021, but even SOPs, we're constantly tweaking those.
I know.
Just tweak the vacation policy in the employee handbook,
Okay.
but you have to, as an organization, you have to rely on your leadership team. You have to have your weekly meetings. You have to have your SOPs, and then you need to take a look at the software because software is software. It makes mistakes. Sometimes they'll just make a change on you, and you have to just, instead of crying about it, you got to embrace it and attack it. I always say to this all the time: we're a solutions-based organization. We don't
Yes,
look
sir.
for problems. We look for solutions.
It's good that that's what your mentality is, and that's my mentality. It's why I started TSSG, was to help people, and that's why we started Field Tested Live, right? First Field Tested Live we did was down there in Florida, down at Fort Lauderdale. We had a lot of your guys there. You were there. You spoke, and we have our next
Oh,
event
that was
coming
a
up in
wild event.
August. And yeah, it was a pretty good event, right? We had a good time, and we had a lot of people there. But this event in Chicago is going to be a good time. We're keeping it smaller room. We're keeping it at 50 seats, so it's a little more intimate. And I know Kevin Larison's going to be there. Steve Schreiber's going to be there. You're going to be there. What are you excited to talk to these people about at FTL in Chicago?
Well, I mean, the reason why they all need to attend is because this industry is just changing, and the dealers the dealers that continue to do things the same way that they did 5 or 10 years ago, they're just going to struggle. So what I'm excited is that the dealers who come and they're open to learning and embracing the new ideas, and understanding that I was in their seat several years ago, but I focused on improving my operations and making my team better. They're going to build strong businesses and they're going to thrive. Obviously we can't control the weather, so we didn't get a hurricane event, but
Yeah.
our business is very seasonal. If you can build a business that has that ecosystem, that when it's slower, your guys can do electrical work, or it's slower, your guys can do gas work. Whatever it is, I don't really know. It depends where you are, But for me and you, events like this give you access to real operators who are in
Yes.
the trenches every day. you
Yes.
know
So
I had
not
a
just the
baby
guy
I had a
speaking.
baby a week ago,
Yes.
and I had a baby a
Congrats.
week ago. Thank you. And mommy and baby are great at home, but you know what, I love what I do. I got back into work, and I'm
Amen.
technically not supposed to be working this week, but you can always learn something new, and that's why you need to go to these field tested live events. And otherwise it could take you years of trial and error, and my thing to them would be, if you're serious about growth, profit, and protecting your independence, it's worth being there.
Awesome, man, and I appreciate that. I gotta say though, let me put it in the mindset of, let's say, the average person listening to this podcast, right? They listen to some podcasts, they maybe they watch our YouTube channel, they follow us on social media, but $550 for a ticket, maybe $150 for the hotel room, $300 for a flight. Why somebody's gonna spend $1,500 on this? What do you think, that $1,500 is worth it to come to an FTL event?
100%. I mean, it's an investment in yourself. And I would bet you're a man of your word. If they didn't find something that was worth $1,500 from that event, you'd probably reimburse them. But I guarantee, just from listening to Kevin, myself, Steve, and you, and the things that you're going to tell them about the processes and getting these people to the kitchen table and talking with them, it's going to be invaluable. They're going to start, there's going to be something. I always say this: I try to attend as many events as I can. There's always going to be one silver lining that just clicks. They just need to pay attention. They don't need to take a picture of every single slide. You're going to send that to them. They just need to listen,
Great.
and they just need to listen. That's just the honest truth.
No, I agree with it. And, that's why we do the mixer the night before. And it's so funny because inevitably, we've done a half dozen of these events. Inevitably, we're sitting at the mixer and it's 10, 15 guys, sitting around talking. And somebody says, this is the best part of the seminar. This is why I love coming here. I think that's what we always say at the conferences and that stuff too, So it's good to have the hang. It's good to see everybody. But it's going to be great to see you. It's going to be great to see Kevin. And I'm excited to hear what you're going to talk about and what's going to be bringing there. Before we end this episode, I just would like to see, what's your future look like? What do you have going on? I know you have the new baby and everything's big there, but what do you think of the future of the generator industry, and what could the rest of the people that are listening to this podcast, they spent 40 minutes listening, what's the thing that they should be thinking about the future of the generator industry?
I believe the future of this industry belongs to the independent dealers, the ones that are going to evolve. The opportunity has never been bigger, but neither has the competition. The businesses that will win are the ones that build trust, diversify, and focus on the customer relationships, and operate with focus every single day. And for us, we're continually evolving. I can't share every single detail, but we're focusing so much on the formula that has gotten us here. I'm excited for some future mergers and acquisitions. I'm excited for where we're heading as an organization. I'm excited for the growth of our leadership team and the redevelopment of our marketing programs. And, I think just like everything, history repeats itself. Storms will be back. And the difference is the amount of experience that's at our organization when it comes to handling a real storm trumps every single organization that's here in our state. And that's what I'm excited about, because when the problems do happen, we have the solutions. And that's what I'm just absolutely stoked about that we're able to do for our community.
Oh, well, Jesse, that's a perfect way to end this. And, I thank you so much for being on the podcast and being such a big supporter of TSSG. And, folks, if you want to see more about Jesse, go to rackelectric.com. Definitely find him on LinkedIn and talk to him. Jesse will be the featured speaker at our TSSG Field Tested live event. Get your tickets at tssgcoaching.com. It's on August 5th in Chicago. Steve Schreiber will be there. Kevin Larison will be there. I'll be there. There'll be a bunch of other dealers there, and you guys are going to learn some cool stuff. But the biggest thing that you're going to learn is to start working a process and to stop blaming the leads.